Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about restaurant break-ins, the legislative fight over rent control, and oysters stealing green crabs. Joining us for our weekly news roundup are Portland Business Journal managing editor Andy Giegrich and reporter Malia Spencer. It's Friday, April 7th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Malia, Andy, thanks so much for joining us. And Andy, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really amazed that you're having me back.
Malia, I don't know if you know this, but Andy was like our very first Roundup guest.
Oh, that's exciting.
It really was.
Yeah, it was. That's online forever now. So no one can ever take that from me.
Have you added it to your LinkedIn resume?
Oh my God, it's on my TikTok page. And,
Well, before we dive into some of this week's stories, I wanted to ask you both a question. And actually, since we were talking about TikTok, I'm not sure if you're on TikTok, but a while back, there was a trend going on where people would make a list of all the places in their cities that they would take someone they hated.
That's pretty good.
But I'll start mine off just so you guys can take a moment to gather your thoughts. But I thought that immediately we would only get around by those orange Biketown bikes. Not because they're terrible bikes. I think that's a great service that we have, but because of the reception that we would get from people who live here. Like, nobody likes seeing someone on those Biketown bikes for some reason. And I think it's because we've seen so many people try to, get on the I-5 with them accidentally, because they don't know Portland and they're just, on the wrong street, Right. And you're just like, get out of here, moron, you're going to kill yourself. So, yeah.
It's pretty good.
And then from there, we're just going to do a tour of lines. We're just going to go, we're going to go straight to screen door, no reservation, 11 a.m. Let's start the day.
I mean, it's not like you could make a reservation because nowhere in town takes a reservation.
Actually, screen door does take a reservation, but but nobody knows about it.
Oh, I have been guilty of taking friends to screen door, but I make them go right when it opens because I had the candied bacon that they do,
the praline,
and it changed my life.
Of course,
it was really good. I was like, okay.
So that would be breakfast, and then for lunch we would go to Porcano for the best tacos this side of the Mississippi, and wait for another maybe hour and a half, for $6 tacos, and then we're gonna skip dinner because I don't like this person, and we will wait at a Voodoo Donut line. For dinner, because everyone loves donuts for dinner.
Right. I mean, donuts anytime.
That's vindictive. So I would take them to there's this place sort of by our office called the Yard House, and it's a quote unquote beer place. And I would take them there because if I hate them, just because the service is always terrible. The beer selection isn't that great. So they would leave Portland and tell people, oh my God, their reputation for beer is so terrible. I'm never going back there again. And just, yeah.
Nice.
What about you, Malia?
So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm probably the worst person to ask this question to because I cover so many small businesses that I have such a hard time being like, that's not good.
It doesn't have to be a small business. I feel like I started that trend. It could just be like, oh, I'm going to take them to this really dumb park,
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely maybe taking people to lines. Maybe not, definitely the Voodoo line because that's just funny. But going to places at their peak time. Trying to go somewhere for brunch at 11. Once everybody has rolled out of bed from whatever they did the night before. And maybe go to do a hike in the gorge at noon.
So mean.
And make them park. I'll make them drive. So they have to find the parking.
Oh my God.
And not tell them about the whole white line thing.
Can we just, Andy, I love that you're like, I have one. Andy, go.
I got one. If I could get in there, a training room at Nike, because the employees there are so intense about everything, and it's just not like any other gym you could possibly go to. They're just going to be all get out of my way, and it's so yeah. If I could possibly somehow get in there.
So niche. If you could even get into the Nike training room, I would love that you'd jump hoops just to take someone you hate into that
Absolutely.
training room.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for playing with me. But Malia, I really want to start off with your headline because you wrote it. This is your story. Tell us about it.
So the story is about restaurants in Portland, and there was a survey where, let's see, it was more than 100 respondents, and 97% didn't think the city is headed in the right direction to have a thriving food industry, which is pretty staggering considering how Portland is kind of known as this foodie
we're
place.
known as a foodie town, yeah.
Right. I mean, we were just talking about, taking people to brunch and like all of these food things.
I mean, that's the first thing that you would come to, like, if someone visits me, where am I going to take them to eat? Which is 100% right, yeah.
Exactly. And so there's a software company in town called Poached that does hiring software for restaurants. And they work with folks all over the country, but they're based here in Portland, and they did this survey of Portland customers. And it was done sort of at the prompting of one of their customers, who also happens to know the owner of Laughing Planet, which has, I believe they have 15 locations across 3 states. I mean, most of them are in Oregon, most are in kind of the Portland metro. But he had 4 break-ins in 5 days and was thinking, is it me? Like, what's happening? And so he asked, hey, can you maybe do a survey or something? We can see what's going on and kind of get a little bit of a benchmark. And so they did this survey. And some of the numbers are just, it's sad. So 83% of respondents said that their businesses had been broken into. 90% of that group said it happened in the past year. 79% said that they were broken into more than once. And 30% had been broken into more than 5 times. And this is like property damage. Those windows are expensive to replace. People's insurance are dropping them because they're making too many claims, or people just don't make claims. So it's really hard to have a small business right now, and particularly these restaurants. And so they were kind of hoping to at least shed some light on this, because another issue that kind of came out was that 99% of respondents do not feel that Portland's elected officials are supporting them. So there's just this huge disconnect between these business owners and City Hall. They're not feeling seen. They're not feeling heard. These are, smaller businesses compared to maybe some others in town. And so they are just really frustrated, which is really sad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you walk around your neighborhood and all you see are like boarded up, glass doors because they were just knocked out the night before, you're not going to feel safe, or you're going to feel bad, especially if, I don't know, like I live in St. John's, and that happened a few weeks ago where 3 people got hit, like 3 stores. And they were like my favorite little restaurants, it was like my favorite wine shop. And you feel so bad because that they're small business owners, and what are they just have to replace the window and move on, And
it's just, and so many of them too are, these little areas. Somebody had pointed this out to me, like people talk about where you live in Portland kind of based on what your little commercial district is. Like that's kind of the heart of each of the neighborhoods.
Andy, what do you think?
I mean, it is out and out depressing to walk into a place that has a boarded up front door for sure. It's just kind of mind blowing. The 90% thing, when Malia mentioned that at our newsroom meeting a couple weeks ago, we were just absolutely gobsmacked.
But like, were you surprised?
I was surprised by that it was a high number. Yeah, but it's just hearing it was just very, very stark, though.
One of the other things I found interesting as I've been kind of covering this stuff is that it's also, Portland's dealing with a lot of things right now and trying to sort of have a lot of discussions at the same time that, multiple things can be true at once. And so there's a lot of nuance that people have been kind of pointing out. Like everybody I talk to is like pretty careful to say like, look, we think there are people who are being opportunistic on the fact that like, there's not going to be ramifications. Like this isn't necessarily folks who have been, pushed out into homelessness because of the affordability issues and stuff in town. Like
these are just criminals.
Yeah. Which has been actually something that I have been, I guess, kind of pleasantly surprised about, because as we've gone into doing a lot of this coverage, I was expecting people to be equating things that don't need to be equated and shouldn't be equated. And people weren't, which was really surprising.
Yeah. But what are you hearing, I mean, about things happening? Because I feel like the only reason the Central East Side started getting those sweeps at night and more police presence is because Salt and Straw did something that, of course, a lot of us were like, oh, so cringy, but it worked. For those who don't know about the Salt and Straw thing, Salt and Straw is another line that I would take someone I hate. They make...
Although, to be fair, the ice cream is good.
I don't like salmon ice cream, but yeah.
Oh, my God.
Sorry. I don't like salmon miso ice cream, but sure.
Ugh.
So but they're huge, and they basically said, "Hey, we're gonna leave Portland. We're gonna leave Portland if the police presence doesn't step up, because our employees are feeling unsafe, and that can't be." And so something did happen, even though everybody was like rolling their eyes about it. Something did happen.
Right. And it wasn't, I mean, it was Salt and Straw, Revan Optics, which is over there. And these are all like small businesses that started in Portland and do a lot for the small business community. I mean, people go to Kim Malik and talk to her all the time about like, how did you build this? Because it's really hard. And so they, unfortunately, I mean, they had to go that direction, and something happened, which is kind of like this survey that I talked to the restaurant owners about. They also kind of wanted to have this so that they at least had some numbers to point to and really try and highlight this issue, because that's the thing, is like, people, I don't know, they're not seeing it, they're ignoring it, they're not listening to it, whatever. And as one of the restaurant owners told me, is like, sometimes you got to poke the bear. And so they have this survey, they've got a lot of anonymous comments from various restaurant owners about the problems that they're having. And I think they're just really trying to use it to sort of show the elected officials, like, this is what we're dealing with here. Like, please help us.
They have to get united, in a sense, a union, if you will.
Right, a union, if you will. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they because the difference between a small business owner trying to call up City Hall versus like, one of the giant bank or something like that. I mean, it's going to get a different response, and that's what people have been talking about. And so, Salt and Straw has such a big, important brand that, they were able to kind of be like, look, we've done a lot for this city. Please help us.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week. Andy, I know that you wanted to talk about the rent control bills that are advancing. Would you tell us what's going on with that?
Right now, it is still in the process. It's not like a purgatory, but whatever it is between committee and the full Senate. So a Senate committee passed the bill that they're shaping over on Monday by a party line vote of 3-2.
Could you explain what the bill is for those who haven't been following this legislative session?
Oh, is my rent going down? Does that what this bill means?
That's right. Everyone's rent is getting cut. No, hardly. So basically, in 2019, there was a bill passed that did offer some form of rent control in Oregon, and that called for the limit of rent increases could only be 7% plus the consumer price index. And that seemed like a good thing at the time, just because a lot of rents were going up by 20, 25%, or God, infinity. So a couple of senators got together and said, let's try to manage this a little bit more. So, I mean, the bill's taken shape over the past couple of weeks, and on Monday, the measure that passed out of committee has like a lot of wins for the building owners, I think. For starters, Claudia, sorry, man, there's going to be a lot of numbers here.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, so originally they had sought limiting it to 3% plus consumer price index. So that would probably be like in a normal year, 7%. The landlords, building owners got them to compromise. And so now they got 5% plus CPI or 10%, the lower of those numbers. So I just think there were a couple of things that landlords, building owners really did get. The big thing being that there is an exemption right now that this doesn't take effect for buildings until the buildings are 15 years old. So the senators wanted to knock that down to 3 years. Um, no, they did not win that. They didn't win anything remotely close. There's no middle ground on that. It's staying at 15 years. So that's a pretty big win for the landlords here, I think. But I guess like one thing that was a little bit of a revelation, and this comes from like the National Apartment Owners Association is I think the group. So take that for what it is. But they say that like 50% of their members are mom and pop landlords, so they are like ADU owners and whatnot. So I guess you could, looking out for them, they would get squeezed if they have just like a bunch of issues with their unit and have to do law repairs or something, and then they can't raise rent by more than 10%. So yeah, they could get hit. Always looking out for the little guy here,
Yeah.
I guess.
It's so funny because I feel like a lot of people don't, especially those who are renting, just never see a landlord as a little guy,
I know. Oh my God.
I think it also depends on if you're renting from, big faceless private equity company that owns like 10 buildings, or if you're renting from, somebody who lives on the other side of Portland or.
But yeah, that's almost certainly who's fighting this, because all of the arguments against are just that it'll be too expensive to build here, and building owners or developers are 66% less likely to build in places where there's rent control.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is it's happening everywhere,
Malia, what do you think of these bills?
I mean, having some sort of stability is huge for folks. I mean, that's part of the issue with everything we were talking about earlier, and like affordability and stuff like that. I mean, this ties into all of the small business owners and things like that too. When I had been talking to one business owner, they were telling me like in old, quote unquote, old Portland, you could live in your neighborhood and work at a restaurant in your neighborhood, or work at a independent retailer in your neighborhood and walk to work. It was great. It was all in this neighborhood. And then things started to get slowly more expensive, and you had to move a little bit further out. And then maybe you had to bike to work, or you took the bus, but then people kept having to get further and further and further out. And so now you've got the issue where all of these small business owners can't find employees because they got to live so far away.
Yeah. And they're not, so and then you have to afford a car. It's so funny. We were just talking to, Jonathan Moz from Bike Portland, and he basically stated that like, hey, people are biking less because of how the expansion is working, and people are, and it's because of they can't afford to live closer to where they work. But yeah.
You know who the first person was I ever heard talk about that was Andy Ricker of Pock Pock, who was saying that he was having trouble keeping employees because they had to keep moving further and further out. So I
mean, bottom line, something's got to be done.
Well, thank you, Andy, for breaking that down for us. I've been hearing about it, been talking to actually tenant rights activists about, how hard they're pushing to make sure that landlords aren't getting any more gains.
I'm not sure. You probably don't remember, but when I was on the first time, we talked a little bit about like landlords and bankers being like the most strident lobbyers. So this is, Exhibit A on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to veer us off course because I want to talk about green invasive crabs.
What are green invasive crabs?
Buckle up.
All right.
No, so this is a story from the Northwest News Network by a reporter named Tom Bonsi. And it's going to sound like I'm talking about something that's only affecting Washington, but I swear we're going to come around to Oregon and why it's going to affect Portland.
I mean, there's crabs here. There's crab people. You can get crabs on the coast.
So these green invasive crabs are hitched a ride from Europe, came up from California, and found a stronghold in Willapa Bay, which is in Washington. And I didn't know this, but this bay produces like nearly 70% of the oysters from like Washington.
Oh no, and I know some people who are going to be very sad.
The fat bastard comes from this bay. I don't know if you guys eat oysters, but the fat bastard is one of my favorites. It comes from Willapa Bay. And Washington is by far the largest producer of manila clams in the nation. And this is all shellfish growers basically ringing the alarm, which has been happening for a bit. It's like, hey, these crabs are not only eating like the baby, oysters and clams and are screwing up our beds, but when they're done with that, they're actually eating the entire ecosystem. They're going after the grass. They're going after all the things that make, this bay a habitat. So can we maybe stop this? And now, finally, Senator Patty Murray and Derek Kilmer are expected to announce an initiative to secure funding to really go after them.
Do these crabs taste good?
This is the annoying part. Like most non-natives, they take and they don't give because there's no meat on these crabs, really.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're just out there ruining life for everyone, and you can't really eat them. So,
oh, bummer.
I know. So Tom followed one of these boats that were going out to, take these crabs out of their section of the bay. The crew collected like 109 in less than 2 hours, and right now they're starting to form in Oregon. People have seen them, but the Oregon Department of Wildlife is like basically saying not much. They're just like there's no real interest in removing the green crab, even though we're seeing exactly what's happening in Washington. And we do grow oysters. We do grow shellfish. The delicious Kumamoto. I'm just naming like my all-star favorites.
Wow, you are like an aficionado.
Do you guys not eat oysters? That should have been my first question.
I don't. My mom loves oysters.
So this was a big deal for me because I love oysters. And when I heard that there might be, a reason that I would maybe not have oysters in the next 10 years, like I perked up, So right now, the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Department, if you go into their, website, they're basically saying like, hey man, they're here to stay, live with them. Here is a recipe on how you can eat them, because we know that they're not that good. And you can hunt them, of course, all year long, because they're like, that'd be great if you guys just... Basically, their strategy is like, the people will eat them.
I wonder if there's like a way for, California, because Northern California's got it as like the shellfish industry and everything as well. Like, is there some way for like the West Coast to like, I don't know, do something?
Unite? Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know. Form a union.
I just feel like if I could just choose any title for this episode, it would be like, I don't know, form a union. Yeah, because it's happening in California and they're not also taking a huge interest, because what happens is the currents move up, right? So all the larvae of these invasive green crabs are going up, and where are they getting stuck? In the bays of Washington.
Right. Because Canada comes out.
Exactly, because Canada comes out. So they're getting stuck in Washington. So for Washington, it's devastating, their shellfish industry. But we're just like, see you later, little crabs. But eventually they're going to eat their way down.
Right.
Has no one read The Hungry Caterpillar?
Right, exactly.
Oh, I haven't.
What?
Andy, you have not read The Hungry Caterpillar? A little hungry caterpillar, except in this book, it turns into a beautiful butterfly.
Right. Or maybe it should be if you give a mouse a cookie. I don't know.
I didn't read that one. But all I'm saying is...
Same sort of thing.
I didn't realize this is going to be an English lit.
English lit children's literature. Let's.
It's classic English lit.
The Oregon thing here, I am kind of just hung up on this. So Oregon is just not caring, or just
they don't see it as a big enough threat, even though we all know that these things compound. Yeah,
it's obviously a threat.
Start small.
Yeah.
Start small, not a big deal.
Just the fact that they're here is like not cool,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We've just lived through 3 years of maybe it won't come over here and maybe it won't be a big deal.
Yeah. That's true.
It all comes back to the pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to my piece. So if anyone out there loves oysters and crabs, if you see these little green crabs, and here's the thing, they're not necessarily green, it's just it's the kind of I know sometimes they look like Dungeness just by color, but but anyone who actually knows crabs would be like, what's this weird little guy? Because they don't get as big, and they have like these weird, their shell has like it's kind of spiky,
figures.
Yeah, of course, right?
Is there something to do with the shells? Because sometimes I know like crab shells or oyster shells and stuff get used in like other industrial kind of.
Oh, so you think that maybe we could find a use for the green crab, make it so
Right. And
people
so
go
then
out.
maybe people will care to go, because basically you gotta make money on something. So if people can then care that way, maybe.
That's actually a good idea. I don't know. Because it's definitely not the meat of this crab that people are wanting.
Right. We can't eat them.
Oh, actually, before we leave, I do want to state that our lead producer, John, wanted to join the conversation at top where we were talking about where you would take someone you hate, and
I would take them crabbing for these crabs you can't eat.
That's actually a great idea. We're just like, we're gonna go crabbing, and every crab we're just like, wah, wah,
getting
wah,
on a boat,
wah.
you're gonna get seasick, and then you get no benefit.
These are terrible crabs. Also, they're ruining things, so we're having a good time all around. But John said that he would basically get a McMiniman's passport and force the person visiting to go to every McMiniman's with him and get a stamp. And I don't know why, but that's so evil and hilarious. And I just needed to mention that. For those who don't know what McMiniman's is, it's like our own indie version of a Red Robin. or or an Applebee's. But like better, of course, but
they got cool art.
Yeah. But it's it's a chain. Well, thanks you guys for hanging out and talking through some of the news headlines this week. Andy, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Malia, thank you for joining us for the first time. Hopefully we'll have you back on again, maybe as a follow-up for your business break-in story.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Our lead producer is John Atariani. Our audio producer is Julia Fiaioni. Our newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan. Special thanks to Lizzie Goldsmith for all of her production help this week. And our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.